Is there any controversy at all? I know the U.S. men's national team was pretty much dominated by Mexico. We're going to get to Mexico in a bit because they were the best team in this competition, and they played well tonight. But was there any controversy here? There's a handball or a no-call handball on Jorge Sanchez where he's falling over, and he literally puts his palm on the ball. I want to read something before you answer from Joe Macknick, who's our buddy. He's down at Fox. He's a referee analyst. He says, when a player is fallen and makes accidental contact with the ball, with his support or lower hand, the interpretation is it is not a deliberate handling unless, of course, the player deliberately moves that hand or arm to play the ball. I don't think he tried to play the ball.
No.
I do feel it's one of those situations where hand on the ground and makes contact.
Well, his hand was going. He was falling, and he was trying to hold himself. And I think as he looks down, he realizes he's falling right on the ball.
So no handball.
And then he's like trying to, and then I don't know, gravity makes it really hard for you to then fly back up. So yeah, I think that would have been
no controversy.
As much as I would have loved that penalty to be called.
Our gut feeling right away was that.
That's one of those ones, Janusz, where if that happens to your team, and it's called against your team, you're furious. And when it happens for your team, you're like, oh, that was a nice little gift.
Yeah, I agree with both of you guys. Listen, Tyler Adams, maybe he's not 100% yet, but his counterpart in that midfield certainly looked 100% tonight, and that was Edson Alvarez. Edson Alvarez had a man-of-the-match performance. It wasn't just the goal. He was everywhere today. And it wasn't just this game. Beginning of the games of this Gold Cup, he played center back. He's played in the midfield. He's played with different partners. He's the same Edson that the U.S. or that the Mexican national team fans have been accustomed to. A guy that dominates physically and defensively his position. What did you see of Edson Alvarez in this game?
I agree with you. Not only in this game, but I think throughout the tournament. I think we knew that the Mexican side had more of what is going to resemble potential World Cup squad. You still need, I think, in any circumstance, in any tournament circumstance, you need the players, your star players have to show up. They don't have to necessarily be superstars, but they have to be your marquee players. And Edson Alvarez was that player. That's why I was really happy about Chris Richards on the U.S. side. He was that player for them. Some other players didn't quite do it, but give Alvarez a ton of credit. He was in a position, didn't have maybe the season he would have liked this year for West Ham. So fantastic that he does that for the Mexican national team, and then they'll really want him to have a good season next year going into the World Cup because he's crucial.
You've seen him at the club level. What happened to him this year at the club level? Why couldn't he put it together? And why do you think he's putting it together now?
You know what happened to him was West Ham. I mean, who's had a great season there? I mean, look, he came under David Moyes, I think. Then Lopetegui was total disaster. Yeah. Graham Potter hasn't been good when it hasn't clicked just
yet. He plays higher up the field with Graham Potter as well.
You know, David Moyes recognized what he's got, and you know, for the most part, he was very good there. But he came here and he was terrific. I think you could see he was a leader, right? You could see that. You know, the confidence, but almost as if he said from the get-go, from the first game, this is my team, this is my midfield, right? And the commitment, the tackles. Remember the sliding tackle late in the game
in the box?
In the box. I mean, he was everywhere. Obviously, in that first game, he was moved to center back. So I think Javier Aguirre understands how good he is. He probably, first thing he came to him and said, listen, you're my man. You're my man in the center of the pitch. You've got to keep the rhythm. I know what you can do. Do your best. I trust in you. I don't know if those words came out, but it seemed to me that this was a player full of confidence coming off, as you've mentioned, pretty average season.
But it's also, I think, a Javier Aguirre Mexico side that isn't going to overwhelm you with fancy midfield and dynamic runs and all this kind of stuff. So they've almost said, we know we don't have that aspect. So we have to make sure we're well organized and we're really good at the back. And when you have somebody playing as well as Alvarez is for the national team right now, to your point, Janusz, and saying, hey, go be that general for me, either defensive midfield, and if you have to slide back at center back at times, great, but he looked to have taken that role really well.
And you know also why I think, because, you know, and I didn't pay attention to him, Herc, as you know, so I'm going to be honest here. Marcel Ruiz, very smart, very intelligent, almost, I don't want to say I like, you know, but those two
they complement each other.
Yes. And they're both box to box. I mean, they
Marcel
can defend.
he's very got finesse to his
He's got
game.
finesse, got intelligence, right? Distribution. Alvarez has that as well, but I mean, they're both box to box. They feel comfortable defending and taking the ball away, but they also feel comfortable carrying the ball, distributing the ball as well. So you have two players that I think, by the looks of it, they enjoy playing with each other
But
very
Hirsch
much.
when they complement each other, but I would say probably Ruiz goes a little more further forward, knowing.
And you want that.
Yeah, but also knowing that you have
But they both can.
that
That's
stabilizing factor of Alvarez.
You know what I
behind him.
learned about Edson Alvarez this tournament is the man is a set-piece monster. Mexico was a team that didn't do well on set pieces, defending or attacking. This was the 5th goal that Mexico has scored off of a set piece. Edson's been directly involved in 3 of those. An opening day against the Dominican Republic, he scores 1 goal, has another that literally hits off a header off of Cesar Montes' shoulder. They give it to Montes, and he scores here. This is a man that's showing up. That's what I learned from him. What do you think the Mexican national team coach Javier Aguirre can learn about this Gold Cup from his players?
I think what he's learned is that they don't have to be flashy. They know how to grind out a result. And they also know how to be kind of compact and difficult to break down, which I know there's a lot of Mexican fans that want to see, Blanco stepping on the ball and saluting people and doing stuff like that. But that isn't the personality of this team. They can't win doing that. And I think Aguirre's found the best way for this team to be able to win. And that's a starting point, because I think if you go from where Mexico was before the Nations League to where they are now, it's still not, you're still not going, all right, this is a Mexico that's going to really cause problems in a World Cup, but you're saying this isn't a Mexico that's going to embarrass themselves.
A massive turnaround, though.
Massive turnaround.
As you said, I mean, we're going from a time where we beat them 3 times straight. They go to the World Cup. We're talking about Mexico as maybe the worst we've ever seen, right, for the last 20, 30 years. And it's true, because it's not just us, because we don't like, we want to beat them, but even their own
We want to
fans
say that
saying,
every time.
This is disaster. In he comes, wins the Nations League now, and this, and all of a sudden there's a belief. So I think what he brought is some sort of belief, because it's not easy to turn the national team of this ilk, like Mexico and us to some degree. It's not easy to turn that so quickly. And I think he's done a pretty good job so far.
And Herc, you said something off, when we were watching the match.
Easy.
That there's less pressure on Pochettino because he didn't have his full complement of players.
Right.
And you said that if Mexico loses, because they had more or less their full complement of players, there's also something about winning when you're supposed to win. And handling that pressure, going a goal down, 4 minutes, not panicking, and then finding a way to win the game when you controlled the game. What did we kept saying? Mexico's in the past and U.S. national teams in the past, particularly in this recent history, we said, the U.S. will sneak a goal here. And then they'll get that equalizer, and then they'll take it extra time, and then we can all pile on Mexico. But like I said, we didn't have the quality to do that from the U.S. side, and Mexico has shown a bit more maturity.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. This is actually the first time since 2015, a game versus Panama, that Mexico has trailed in the game and come back to win. So it's been quite some time, and you're absolutely right, Janusz. This pragmatic approach by Javier Aguirre, that is the staple. But when I think of players who have benefited on this Mexican national team, it's not the defensive or the pragmatic players that I think have benefited from this Gold Cup. I think it's the Marcel Ruizes of the world that you were mentioning. I think it's Gil Mora, who's 16 years of age. It's those creative offensive players. Those are the guys for me that have taken a step. Those are the guys that I think Javier Aguirre now says, I can count on you. Gilberto Mora comes in because Luis Chavez tore his ACL in this tournament. That's the reason he ends up playing, and he's 16 years old, goes on in the semifinal, and absolutely bosses teams in the Honduras team that was very physical. He was knocked down, he was kicked, he got up, he gave a game-winning assist to Raul Jimenez. He looked like he belonged. He didn't look like a 16-year-old. So those are one of the guys that I think going, into the future, Javier Aguirre is going to count on, and it's because of this Gold Cup. Did you see anybody else, or are you?
I absolutely did. The most important player there is, and that's Raúl Jiménez, because his form. We all know what happened to him with the injury. We also know how long it's taken him to get back to his pre-injury level. When he first came on the scene, was it with Wolves, if I remember right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's taken a while at Fulham, right? And you could see it.
And he did that.
And
he got back at club level first.
And you could see at the club level, and we all know how important. I mean, what do we do most of the time? We're talking about who's our number 9.
Yeah.
Almost every team in the world is talking about who's our number 9. Chelsea or Bayern Munich or whatever. You need that number 9. You need that player that can deliver you when need be, right? Somebody that consistently is going to give that to you, where you trust that player. And I think Raúl Jiménez, of course, is that player for them. And he's proven in that tournament that the form that he regained at Fulham, that wasn't just a mistake. It didn't just happen. We knew his quality. We had to wait for such a long time for him to come back to it, and he's there. And I think, we can talk about Mora. We like those young players because they give you hope. Mexican people, I'm sure, talking a lot more about Mora than they're even talking about Raúl Jiménez because we like those stories. We like Yamal, right? We like Messi when he was 16, 17, and all the great players. We like talking about players like that, especially when they play well.
Case, the question everybody's asking right now, who is the giant of CONCACAF? Who is El Gigante de CONCACAF? Mexico just won another Gold Cup, another trophy. They just won the Nations League. You have Canada, you have the U.S., or is it a Panama? Who is the giant of CONCACAF?
Who's the team in form right now is Mexico, no question.
Would you call them the giant?
Look, there's 2 giants in CONCACAF, the U.S. and Mexico, and they will go back and forth on who's in the better form. You don't go Mexico not beating the U.S. in 6 matches, and then you win a Nations League and a Gold Cup against the U.S., you're back on top. Now it's going to be interesting for the U.S. to be able to, and we're both hosting the World Cup, and so it'll be very interesting in this next 12 months to see who can get their players in the right form, in the right frame of mind, and really be able to perform. Because, put it this way, if Mexico won the Nations League and the Gold Cup, but don't get out of the first round of the World Cup, and the U.S. loses the Nations League and the Gold Cup, but gets out of the first round of the Gold Cup, nobody cares about what happened this year. They care about what happens next year. Now, what this is a preparation for next year. And yes, you want the bragging rights, and you never want to lose to your biggest rival. But the consolation is have a good World Cup.
It changes quickly. We just talked about us winning 3 times, but history only remembers titles, right? And we have to honestly say that right now they've won it 10 times, the Gold Cup, and we've won it 7. So unfortunately, unfortunately for us, yes, I mean that difference is so much smaller than it used to be. But let's give Mexico credit because if we're going to say who's the best team in the CONCACAF, historically we have to say it's Mexico.
I don't even think it's a historical context anymore, guys. If we look at the Canadian national team, I keep advocating this being a very dangerous team and the best, for my money, team in the way they play. But they didn't do well in the Nations League. They didn't do well here in the Gold Cup. They bowed out to a Guatemalan team, and 106th, you said?
106th.
106th, in FIFA's men's rankings. I look at the U.S. The U.S. has now not done well in Copa America. They've not done well in Nations League. They've not done well in Gold Cup. Few things to brag about if you're an American fan these days. Panama, yeah, they get there, but they've never won. And this last time, they didn't even get there. Honduras, who got spanked 6-0 to Canada, ended up beating them in penalty kicks. So who else is left? Well, it's a team that's actually winning. It's a team that's actually lifting trophies. And not only are they lifting trophies, but they have the historical context behind them that you mentioned. And oh, by the way, any given Sunday, anywhere around the world, they will pack a stadium. There was 72,000 fans at NRG in Houston. I'm going to go ahead, probably 68,000.
Maybe not quite that.
Were pro-Mexican fans. I don't think there's a question.
I saw a couple couples that had...
saw a couple couples.
I saw a couple couples.
Okay.
That had, like, the split jersey.
Yes, I saw a lot of those.
And I think there's... So I think there was some divided houses, but I think I agree with you. It was significantly, look, we know this.
This is never going to change.
This is not
It's
gonna
always been
change.
like this. It'll always
Yeah.
be like this.
But,
None
I don't
of it
think
will
so.
change unless we play in Columbus.
No, not just Columbus, but
No,
Hey,
I-
in St. Louis,
Yeah,
you
there's
saw
a
the
few-
crowd,
No,
Guatemalan
but
crowd.
there's a big difference, Janusz. There's a difference when U.S. Soccer is in charge of selling the
I
tickets.
knew you were going to say that because you said that to me before. But
Yeah,
I take
there's
it.
a difference because
Correct.
I played in those games.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I
I
played
did
in those
too.
games when U.S.
They
Soccer
make a difference.
When
Yeah.
U.S. Soccer said, "Hey, you know what? We're just going to take the money," and then I saw situations where U.S. Soccer said, "You know what? We're going to control the tickets and make sure U.S. fans get the tickets."
Yeah.
And those of us who played in those matches extremely appreciated that.
Yeah.
And and we were part of ESPN was part of the last round of qualifying, and
Harrison, New Jersey.
yeah, and there was games where there was so American. So I mean, we're from Columbus to Cincinnati to places where you went, this is tremendous. This is what and yes, that Costa Rica game 2 cycles ago in Harrison was one of the biggest mistakes
Correct.
that U.S. Soccer had made, and they corrected those. I was with this team down in Costa Rica, the month or 2 before, and I was speaking with some of the people in their federation, and they were going, "Why would the U.S. host this game in New Jersey?"
Yeah.
They said,
Pro Costa Rican
it's
crowd.
like if there's 70% of Costa Rican expats live probably within a
Tri-state area.
in a
Yeah.
tri-state area. I said, why would you do that? And obviously we paid the price for it.
Yeah,
I've
they
been so
paid.
conditioned over the years that I don't even pay attention. I just assume that's going to be the case. That we're not going to have fans.
Well,
and,
listen,
and we can still deal with that.
You
so-
you can't price out the Mexican fan. They've proven it over and over again. I was a little bummed to see Julian Araujo not even dressed for this game. Efrain Alvarez not even dressed for this game. Two American-born Mexican national team players, divided hearts. Speaking of of the nostalgia that Mexico sells this public within the United States on, and they weren't dressed. Here you can see the United States rivalry versus Mexico in finals. 13 finals for the U.S., 12 for Mexico. Titles, 7 for the U.S., 10 for Mexico, and goals scored. Wow, a whopping 18 for Mexico, only 6 for the U.S. men's national team in this rivalry.
That's why you didn't win them.
Yeah. Listen, we could sit here and talk about winning finals, and that's great. But usually, there's not a lot of style. There's not a lot of DNA.
Yeah.
They just say, just go out and win the
Right.
final. I'm curious, if we had to pick out of these two teams, out of these two managers, which team has a clear DNA? Who would it be?
Oh, Mexico, clearly. No question. Aguirre has been at the job multiple times.
If I include Canada, would you say Mexico as well?
Well, you just said already, Canada, with the talent they have, can't seem to get the job done. So I would say that, yeah, I would give Aguirre all the credit for finding how to get the most out of the players he has.
Right.
And to me, that's the sign of a good coach. Anybody can go and say, hey, I've got the best players in the world. Now let me go win matches. But how can you say, I would like to play this way, and I know the Mexican fans would love to see Mexico be more flamboyant and more attack-minded, but he doesn't have the players to play that way. So he's got them structured to give them the best opportunity to win matches, and that's the reason why they've won these last 2 titles.
Yeah, when it comes to Pochettino right now, I couldn't name one characteristic that he's brought in and changed to this team. I mean, he's not the only one. We've had, teams and coaches like that in the past, but right now, coming in, he's had some games with top players, here he didn't have, but I mean, an idea and the way you play, I think should be emerging a little bit right now. Okay, you can say today without some of the best players, you can't play it as expensive as you would like to.
Right.
Fair play.
Fair play.
I remember Pochettino, though, with Spurs at times, where on the counter, they were incredible, right?
Right.
Hume and Son
Yeah.
and Kane, and we can say different players, but I mean, there were games where he's got them to the Champions League final, finished second, right? And you could clearly see how he played. He liked to press. The counter-pressing was good to win the ball quickly. If it wasn't on, sit back just a little bit, and then quickly he go, I haven't seen it. Now, you should be seeing it. I'm not saying it's got to come off the same way as Son and Kane has done it, but the idea of doing it, even if it doesn't pan out in the end, you say, okay, I see a pattern of play. I see an idea of how to play. I'm sorry, but I haven't seen it. All the games, not just.
And I think Janusz made the best point earlier when he said, this is a 40-day spell. This is the time where you have the opportunity to stamp some DNA into your squad. And then what you can say is you can go to the players that weren't here and say, this is what I want when you come back. When you're back into the squad. This is what I expect. And we're still saying, what is that?
So I want so badly to defend Mauricio Pochettino here because he's not had anywhere close to his A team in any camp. There's always multiple players missing. 4 to 5 of those players missing. They're not there, so it's impossible to see this is Mauricio Pochettino's game plan, this is his DNA. But with what he has had, he's come nowhere close to a coherent, actual tactical analysis. I'd love to defend Jesse Marsch because I think they play a nice brand. It's attractive, but they always find ways to lose big games. I'd love to sit here and defend Thomas Christensen, who I think his team plays the best, plays the way he wants them to play, but they do not won anything. And the team that plays a certain style, a certain brand, and wins is Javier Aguirre's Mexican national team. So, yeah, I agree there. No much to it other than that. It's Mexico right now. It's Mexico's moment.